Hey class, coming to you from my front porch again. I wanted to talk a little bit about your final paper assignment, as well as what I'm going to do to kind of adjust your second paper assignment, which is going to be on Parable of the Sower. But all you're going to be doing for Parable of the Sower is generating those three Mountain of Notes entries on a theme or thematic element, as I call them, that is of interest to you, that you think is significant, that you want to explore further. Um, and what you're going to be doing in your final paper is comparing and contrasting, reading with one another and reading against one another, Parable the Sower and one of the other two novels, either The Road or Station 11. Um, and so, what I want to talk to you here about are some of the major thematic elements in Parable the Sower and some of the kind of sub elements that grow out of those, to help maybe generate some ideas for what you want to write about, both in your Mountain of Notes assignments, where you choose a passage that you think is really important that relates to your thematic element, and then you analyze and generate ideas and just type away. It doesn't all have to be great. It certainly doesn't have to be super grammatical. These are just some ideas you're generating, leading to one of those big ideas. And I'll talk more about how that will play into the structure of your paper in another video. So, one of the first three major thematic elements in Parable the Sower that I want to address is that primary disorder that Lauren has of having hyperempathy syndrome. And I want to look at empathy as it relates to community and community building in the novel. On the one hand, we have Lauren's father's community, and he doesn't even get a first name, right? He's just father, Lauren's dad. And he's associated and linked with the walls that surround the community that are supposed to provide protection, and they're supposed to, first and foremost, keep everything the same. Trying to get back to a world that's never coming back. And we see as that the walls become more porous, as people start coming over them, and eventually, of course, they all collapse. This community wasn't prepared for the changes to come. So it's a community that also lacked a certain degree of empathy for one another. Joanne can't empathize with Lauren's desire to prepare for a coming apocalypse. In fact, she and her family, because they're white, they just take off to Olivar. And once Lauren is on the outside, and trying to change and adapt and create a new way of doing things, what we see her begin to do is to form a community. And there are, of course, four other hyper empaths who share her same biological and chemical disorder, who were former slaves, but because their ability to share in others' pain could be used against them, they made the best slaves, as they say, because all of their pain would be doubled, both that which they feel and that which other people feel when they see them. And that empathy, that ability to experience and feel what someone else feels, is ultimately, I think, one of the kinds of a kind of glue that starts to keep that sort of ragtag community, which keeps growing as they move further north. So I think that's a really interesting thematic element. A second one that you can think about is that of both utopia and dystopia. We don't have a lot of, I was challenging my other class to think about what kinds of video games or films or novels or books are rooted in utopian societies. And we almost never get them. And it seems like, well, we're not really interested in perfection. We're more interested in what happens when the world falls apart. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, and you can explore those further in your papers. But we are a culture right now that is almost addicted to apocalyptic narratives, which is one of the reasons I chose to teach this class, because we're all familiar with, say, the Hunger Games, for example. And what we often see is one group of people, those in power traditionally, who created a utopia for themselves, a sort of perfect world, at the expense of others who have to live in a dystopian society. Dystopia suggesting there's no rules, regulations, individual freedom is often violently curtailed. They can be enslaved, or there's debt labor, as we see in Parable of the Sower. And what we see moving into the United States, which is usually seen as a utopian kind of perfect world, is that sorry, there's leaf blowing going on. Is that America can be exploited the way it's usually exploits others. So you have a theme of colonization taking place, where rather than the United States, like with the Native Americans, colonizing them, taking their land, the colonizer is now become the colonized. And that's one of the ways that they are exploited. Their labor is stolen from them. Their bodies become disposable. And they have to join the immigrants, those others that we try and keep out at the southern border. Well, now regular Americans are having to try and move north to a free place, and nobody wants them either. So they become, quite literally, they become refugees, right? And the third thematic element that I think is really interesting and would be worth exploring further is that of literacy and writing. Literacy itself becomes a commodity. It's one that Keith is able to trade on in order to gain some power and a foothold with this gang that he joins. The first thing that Zara asks, who lives kind of as a slave and she's had literacy withheld from her, is she sees Lauren's literacy as something that she needs, something that she wants, that's a gateway to more independence, more agency, more freedom. And we can think about this in the context of slavery, which Lauren mentions throughout the novel, that slavery is back and we are now the enslaved. And that struggle for literacy is very much a part of the African American tradition, and Octavia Butler, as an African American writer, is well aware of that tradition. The importance of literacy as a tool to gain some form of autonomy, and that would be another thematic element that you could look at in relationship to one of the other two novels. Lauren is also becoming a writer herself, a poet, a creator. And that seems a really important part of her identity. As she grows from 15 to 18, she becomes increasingly more invested in her writing as a way to reach people. Okay, so those are three major thematic elements. There is going to be another 5-point quiz with a bonus question. The bonus question is going to be embedded in the second video that I'm about to tape on the road, and some of the main thematic elements there, and things that you might be able to talk about in the road as they relate to Parable of the Sower. Okay, so remember what those three thematic elements are. Those will come up on the quiz that I post. And I will be publishing this video and then publishing a second one on the road in short order here. All right, good to talk to y'all. Take care. Oh, last thing. Sorry about the Course Den debacle. but I've asked you to resubmit your papers so that the grades that I've put on them and the comments I've put on them actually show up on your end, because that was just a huge glitch in the system. A lot of professors were facing it this semester. Okay, thanks very much.